Hello, everyone. My name is Martina Lopez. I'm a recently student support coordinator, and I apologize in advance for all those hearing the background. So thank you all for coming to the recent resume workshop. We are joined here by James Cash. James serves as James. He serves as Senior Assistant Director for Education and Outreach at the Career Center. He has worked at the Career Center for the past nearly 4 years and have over a decade of higher education experience in areas like education, dual credit, volunteer programs, and financial aid, in addition to his current public service role. He also holds 2 degrees from the University of Illinois in psychology and in education policy organization, and is a third generation graduate of the and I'll be if you have any questions.
All right, I think you cut out a little bit there, Marguerite, at the end, but I'm assuming that was my cue to go. So we'll jump right into it. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Glad to be joining you all. Again, my name is James. I work in the Career Center here on campus. I was asked to come talk to you all about the topic of resumes today, so that is what we will be going over. For the folks that we have, I'm just curious, has anybody ever been to the Career Center for any of our programs? Maybe been to a workshop, had a resume review? If you've been to see us, maybe give me like that thumbs up react in Zoom. I was just kind of curious. We've got some repeat customers, so to say. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs. I like it. Very, very good. So if you've been to see us before, come back anytime. If you haven't, here's your official invitation. Come let us know how we can help. We do serve all majors, all grade levels on campus, so use our services whenever it's going to be helpful. But yes, other bit of housekeeping. Career Center does like to track, our attendance and everything with the students that we interact with. So I do have one request. If you all could, in the chat, send me your either net ID or UIN. You can send it just to me. You don't need to send it to the whole group. That way we can just have a record of all the lovely folks that we talked to today. So thank you in advance. I will appreciate that. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. Again, the topic is going to be resumes. Let's get that PowerPoint pulled up. And we will start chatting about those lovely, lovely documents. As we're talking about the topic of resumes, I'm going to let you all know that I am completely interruptible at any point in this presentation. So if you have questions, like throw them in the chat, unmute yourself if you need to. Honestly, I'm fine with either one. But there, there's good information in the slides, but you may have your own things that you're curious about. We want to make sure that we address those as well. But basically, the way that we're going to go through this is we're going to kind of go work through the resume kind of section by section, right? So if you can visualize the resume, either like it would appear on a sheet of paper or on your screen or whatever, we're just going to go top to bottom. Is basically what we're going to do here. But to kind of start us off, though, I do want to start with this thought, because sometimes I'll, ask students when I'm doing these kind of presentations and such, like, what's the purpose of a resume? Why are they important? Why do we sometimes stress out as we're writing them? Why does James from the Career Center come and talk to us about them? And I want to let you know, usually the first answer I get from this is, oh, well, the point of a resume is to get me a job. And yeah, like that's true. I do hope we're thinking about it a little bit deeper than that. I would even counter that the purpose of the resume is to get you your interview, and then that's what gets you the job. But what I really want to avoid is kind of this thought that, you know what, I think I have the wrong PowerPoint pulled up. Give me one moment here. I apologize for that, because this does not look like I was expecting it to. Let me hunt down the other one here. Okay, let's try that again. Well, everything I've just said still applies, by the way. But what I was kind of getting at is that I hope of your resume as just like equivalent to your work history, right? Because that is sometimes what I see from students, and especially a group like this, right? So what do we have in common in this group is kind of like that volunteer aspect, right? That's kind of what we see you is all about. And so I've worked with a lot of students who, this is going to fight me, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Okay. I've worked with a lot of students where that really what they think of is like, again, it's just your work history. I want to push back on that just a little bit, though, because again, maybe we're drawing from experiences that are like volunteer experiences. Well, it isn't formal work. It isn't something I was paid for. But I really want to stress that like there are definitely things that we can pull out of those non-work experiences, again, like volunteerism for this group, where maybe we built a skill or gained some new knowledge or we accomplished a goal that we can be proud of. And those are all absolutely things that belong on your resume. Those are all absolutely things that we can talk through and that can be beneficial to you as a candidate and to an employer who might want to hire you, right? So that's kind of where I want to start here. But having set the stage with that, like I said, basically, we're just going to work our way through the document here. And again, ask questions about any of these sections as we go through. So, first thing I see on your resume, right? Probably your name. This is who the resume belongs to. Contact information as well. So with the document overall, one of the things that we can do is it's okay to use like some formatting to your advantage a little bit, right? So if the whole thing is just one like uniform font where everything kind of blends together, like that's not quite ideal. So your name is an example of this, right? If it's a little bigger, if it's a little bolder, that's okay. Again, there's kind of a purpose to it. Can help us stand out just a little bit. Your contact information, I don't know that there's anything too surprising here. Address, phone number, email, all that kind of deal, right? Sometimes I'll get questions from students like, well, how do I list my address? Do I list the full street address? Do I do my home address? Do I do my campus address? I would say that to that last question, like you don't need both, but you can honestly take your pick. If you want to do your campus one or your home one, really either is okay. Maybe there's some strategy involved, like, oh, I want to appear like a local candidate if maybe I'm working back home. Like that's just one example. That's something you could do, but honestly, either is fine. Again, don't need both. That's just a little bit more information than is really that memorable or helpful for the person who's reading your resume, right? If you want to list out the full street address, like that's a little bit more of a business professional type of format. Maybe that's what you want to convey. But most recruiters these days, they're going to be okay if it's just more like your, city, state location. So kind of take your pick with that, honestly. Email, something professional sounding. I feel like most folks are good about this, no 69s, no 420s, but your U of I one is great for this. It's probably centered around your name in some way. So it's professional sounding, real easy to set up like a free, first name, last name at Gmail, even if you just use it for job hunting, like that's something you could do too. Other web presences, maybe I'm on LinkedIn, Google Scholar, GitHub, those sort of things. This would be a good place to put those as well. I am going to give you a little bit of a pro tip. So slight detour into LinkedIn talk. If you don't have a custom URL on LinkedIn, I would recommend you claim one. Your default LinkedIn URL, if you're on LinkedIn, is just like LinkedIn / ABC123, kind of this string of random characters, right? Looks a little bit messy. But similar to email, you can get a custom URL, like again, maybe it's LinkedIn / your first and last name. I have a, not super common last name. So mine is literally LinkedIn / James Castry. Again, if your name's more common, maybe we throw in some numbers or some periods or whatever, but looks real sleek, real professional on your resume. There's a button in the top right corner of your LinkedIn profile where it would just take a couple seconds and clicks to do this. So I think it's a real good thing to do. Just again, like looking nice and clean on the resume. So contact information, pretty straightforward stuff. For an audience like this, so current students, we would recommend that your education section is a good way to start off the resume. Now this is not carved in stone. There is flexibility in the order in which you put these different sections, right? So maybe you're someone who has a ton of work experience already. I speaking for myself, like I was a non-traditional student. I actually went back to college at age 30. So I know that's a little atypical, but like the point it could be the same, right? Maybe you have more work experience than education experience, and that's what you want to highlight. So there's some flexibility, but the reason why we'd say this is like generally a good idea, something that you could consider is your education section is what you're doing now. So this is current information, right? It's probably relevant in some sense. You may be applying to internships or jobs that are related to your major, So again, that's kind of the train of thought with it, if you choose to go in that direction. Now, some things to keep in mind with your education section, high school stuff, I think avoid is the right word there. Like I would never tell a student, no, nothing from high school, can't do it, because maybe some of us had again, some relevant experiences. Maybe I was in high school and I knew what I wanted to do. And I was in a club back then that is related to my major now, to my future career path. Like that could be something that's great to highlight. But if it's just kind of, oh, well, here's the name of the school, here's the graduation date, and I don't really go much deeper than that. That's something we could probably leave off. If you're here at U of I, we're going to assume you have a high school credential, right? And even with those that are more experiential, I would say, if you're like an underclassman, sort of say freshman, sophomore, like some high school stuff is probably okay, because that's where your experience is at this point. But if you're a senior and you're about to graduate and your whole resume is built up of high school things, maybe that's where we got to question a little bit, like, is there a better way to do this? So I just really say phase it out over time, right? If I get in, halfway through or whatever, through my time here at U of I, and all I have is high school information on my resume, maybe we want to rethink how we're presenting the resume. Maybe we want to say, oh, you know what, I really need to, kind of, hit the ground running here. I need to actually get some of that experience here. Big school like U of I, a lot going on, right? Hopefully some good opportunities that you can take advantage of. But other things to think about, right? So remember, the resume, it's a formal document, it's a professional document. We want the style, the writing style to reflect that. Good example of this is when I'm writing out either the name of my degree or the name of the school that I'm attending, right? We want to keep it formal. And in this case, really what that means is write it all out, honestly. So, if I'm applying for a job on campus and I write, oh, I'm attending U of I can probably put together what you mean, right? But it's in terms of, again, the formality, but also the specificity, right? So maybe I'm applying for a summer internship that's over in Iowa. Ooh, all of a sudden U of I might mean something different to that audience, right? Maybe I just write University of Illinois. Well, there's a UI Chicago, there's a UI Springfield, so we want to be specific here, right? So really just University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I swear to you, that is your best bet. Same thing's going to go for your degree, right? So I did my undergrad here at U of I. I had a degree in psychology. Do I write BS Psych? No. Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Again, keep it formal, write it all out. So hopefully that's making sense. Other things that we would want to keep in mind, right? I do think the expected graduation date is more informative than the start date. So either write them both or just the end date. But if you say, oh, I started in 2021, well, now you're making that reader do just a little bit of extra mental math that they don't need to do. So I would either say start date to end date, or this is when I'm expecting to graduate. To me, that is more informative. So it's a little thing, but it's a helpful thing to the person who's reading, right? We would also say that GPA is really considered optional on your resume. So there's no magic number. Really, the students I work with, I tell them, just self-reflect on this. Is this a GPA that I'm proud of? Do I feel like this reflects well on me? If the answer is yes, put it on. Fantastic. If the answer is it's not quite where I want it, leave it off for now. Maybe a year from now, a semester from now, we get it a little higher. We can always put it back in, right? Resume is very fluid. You should be updating it all the time. So again, optional, really just self-reflect. Think through it for yourself with that. One thing you do want to be careful though, if you're writing your GPA. So you're going to hear me this afternoon say some things that are going to seem like, oh, those are tiny, tiny things. And yeah, some of them are. But we want to remember this, right? So those little things add up throughout the document. One example of this would be like using a consistent number of decimal places, right? So you can see the example here, like a 3.35. Well, 2 decimal places, really, I should be writing out of 4.00. If that was like a flat 3.3, I would write it out of 4.0. So hopefully you kind of get what I'm saying there. So again, the little things add up. And we also want to remember this. With the resume, there are some things we are conveying explicitly. I am attending U of I. This is the degree that I'm getting. But there's also things that we are conveying implicitly. Like an example of that would be our attention to detail, right? So this is actually communicating your attention to detail on that implicit level. So again, it's something that you do want to be mindful of. But yeah, that's mostly what I want to cover with the education section. Most of that is pretty straightforward. But again, if you got questions, like definitely jump in and share those, throw them in the chat, whatever you need to do. But we will move on and talk about some other things, right? So the experiential sections of your resume, this ties back to what I kind of started with, right? Is that your resume is more than your work history. Again, think about it for an audience like this. Some of you I know have done like some really cool, volunteering roles. You've had like some legitimate impact. Like we want to highlight that, right? So I work with some students that they put just too many qualifiers on this. Oh, I can't put it on my resume if it wasn't permanent, full-time, paid work in my field, et cetera, et cetera. And that can be a little too strict. So if that's the way you've been approaching your resume, let's widen that out just a little bit more, right? Again, I've highlighted some things here on this slide, but yeah, if it was a volunteer position that was a one-off, yeah, fine, let's put it on there. If it was something that was I was more like volunteering with a certain organization or an RSO on campus, like yes, absolutely belongs, right? So let's keep this in mind. These are, again, I've said it, but it might be something where we can highlight skills, we can highlight accomplishments, like those are all good things, right? And then kind of the last bullet point on there, I do want to stress that just like we said, there's flexibility in the order in which we put sections. There's also flexibility in the way that we categorize them, right? So one option would be like, okay, here is my discrete work history, like again, my paid positions, let's say. Here is my volunteer section. Like that's one way you could do it. But maybe I've done some things that were volunteering, but were also related to my career path. Well, maybe one other approach we could do is we could say, here's my relevant experience. And it's actually a mix of paid positions and non-paid or volunteer positions. And sometimes I tell this to students and they don't believe me that you can do this, but I promise that you can. And then we have like an other experience section. So we could categorize by the type of activity or work, but we could also categorize by like how related is it. So again, point is like both could be viable. That's something you'll have to self-reflect for yourself. And where do my experiences fall? But again, in a group like this, you may have a lot of that unpaid experience. Like there's good ways to highlight that, and there's multiple ways to highlight that. Is kind of what I'm getting at here. So hopefully that's making sense. But whatever it is that we're describing, right? Some things that we would want to highlight. Again, nothing too surprising on this slide, I don't think. We've already talked about like again the order of the sections. I think the keyword there you can see relevant, right? Relevance is kind of the vocab word for the afternoon. Lead with the things that are more relevant, because the things that we read first, they're just a little bit more salient to the brain of the person reading your resume, right? So they're going to stick out a little bit more. They're going to be kind of that attention hook. They're going to be more memorable. So we want to start strong. We want to top load the document a little bit with, again, those more relevant kind of things. Now within each section, so hopefully you pick up on the distinction there. Within each section, this is just standard resume format. We want to do reverse chronological order. That's going to be standard regardless of industry. So that's what we want to do. And then the type of information that we include, again, is there anything that's blowing your mind here? I don't think so. But it's good to confirm, right? So name of the organization or the company, a title if you had it, preferably a formal title. Location information is good too, right? I may be working for a company that's all over the country, all over the world. So we want to be specific. And then the time frame as well. Now with the time frame, I will throw a little additional comment on here. Like I think a good level of detail is month and year. I will see some students who will list their start and end dates just with the year, or even with like season in the year, like summer to fall or whatever. To me, it's a little imprecise. So month and year, I feel like is a good way to go. And really that's true for whatever type of experience we're describing, right? And then we've said this before, but we can also use that formatting to our advantage, So, we got the example here, like maybe I'm bolding the company name, maybe I'm italicizing the position title. You could do the reverse of that, absolutely could, but you want to be consistent. So whatever you're doing in one section, keep that the same throughout the other sections, right? So hopefully that makes sense. When you're describing these things, right? So it's not just, list the title and whatever. We actually do want some functional descriptions here. We would recommend a bullet point format. I guess the alternative would be like a paragraphic, but with bullet points, there's a couple advantages. One, it's just more efficient for the person reading your document, right? So think of, think of career fairs, for example, like super fast paced, right? I may not have the time to read every single word and every single line on your resume. It might be a quicker scan. And there's research and data that shows like the first time I read your resume, it probably is like that quicker scan, regardless of the context, right? If you make the right impression, then I'll go back and read through it more thoroughly, obviously. So efficiency is part of it. Why bullets would maybe be preferable to writing these super long paragraphs. But it's also helpful for you as the writer. And here's the reason for that, right? Because you're actually maintaining more control over what they're going to remember about you. Maybe I am a good written communicator and I want to be thorough and I write these beautiful descriptions. But if it gets super long, you're kind of leaving it up to chance. Like what is that individual person going to remember from this? Versus saying, hey, boom, boom, boom. Here's 2-3 things, short things, easy to remember things that I want you to take away and learn about me. So you have more control, you have more agency over the impression you make if you're using like more of a bullet point format. So again, a couple of reasons for this. A few bullets per experience. I don't know, again, that there's a magic number. Remember when we were talking about relevance, right? Maybe I want more detail for things that are more in line with the job I'm applying to. Maybe some that are a little bit more loosely related. I want to do a shorter description, like that's okay too. So there is kind of a relativity to that. But as you're writing out your bullet point, something you want to keep in mind, because I see students do this all the time, is they really take a task-focused approach to their descriptions. Here is a task I did, here is a job duty that I carried out. But that on its own is actually not the most complete bullet point, right? So sometimes I'll do this exercise with my students. Let's think through it in terms of those W questions, who, what, where, you kind of know what I'm talking about. A lot of the times we get that what. Again, the task is the what. But we want to be more thorough than that. So think through some of these other questions, honestly, like who was on my team? Who was I collaborating with? Maybe it's who was the audience? Who was the clientele? We can talk through, the setting in which things occurred. How often did we do this? If I did it daily versus weekly versus hourly, like that's the difference, right? Maybe it's that why question, which is a little bit more abstract. But maybe that's like, was there a purpose? Was there a goal that I accomplished? And I'll be honest, we at the Career Center, we hear this from employers all the time. This is something they want to know about you, not just that you can complete, a certain job duty, but that more generally, you're able to either set goals for yourself or have them set for you, and you're able to deliver on those. So we hear this from employers all the time. This is a good thing to highlight, right? And I also want to, again, keeping the volunteering context in mind, sometimes that why question is tough to think through for some students, but for some of you, this may actually be something you can really leverage, because you can say, here's an impact I had on, this cause that I have passion about, or this group of people that I have a passion for, right? So absolutely lean into that with some of these volunteer experiences. And then another good approach is a skill-based approach, right? So, transferable skills, we sometimes hear that's kind of a buzzword, but it's absolutely true. Again, something we hear from employers all the time. U of I students, yeah, they got great technical acumen, but I also want to know about their leadership. I also want to know about their teamwork. I also want to know about their communication abilities. I want someone who can string 2 sentences together in an interview. I want someone who can interact with the other members of our organization. So these are absolutely things that employers are looking for, right? So those skills are good. And again, what it is going beyond just the task. This is also a good thing if maybe I'm drawing from experiences that are like a little less related to the job I'm applying to. Can I still include those on my resume? Yeah, 100% you can. This can help bridge that gap, right? Because if the task was different, but the skill that I used to complete the task has more alignment, this is a good way to kind of fill in some of that connective tissue, right? So I'm a big fan of that skill-based approach. All right, some other thoughts with bullet points here. We're spending more time on bullets because this is the meat of the resume. I feel like this is where we really get into those descriptions, right? Some of this is just standard resume format stuff. So because it is a bullet point format that we're recommending, it's not actually like this fully written out incomplete sentence, believe it or not. So there are things that we don't need. We don't need like to end it with a period. That just cleans it up a little bit visually. We don't need to start every sentence with, that's just kind of some extra, just extra verbiage that doesn't add that much. we can actually start directly with the action word, the verb. And then similar to that, sometimes I'll see students who will do this, where they start every bullet with responsible for. I promise you, whatever you write after that is where you can start. If you say, I was responsible for helping customers, just start with helped customers do the such and such thing, right? And then some other things, right? So we've talked about, like, again, kind of front loading the document. Starting with something that's going to be a hook, starting with something that's going to be relevant. Well, on a micro level, the same applies to actually individual bullets. So we want to be intentional about the word choices we're making, because that first word is, again, going to hook our interest. It's going to set the tone. So think through this. Some words that I don't like in resumes. I actually just said one of them: helped, worked, and never start a bullet with either of those words, because those could mean anything, right? So pick something that's more specific, pick something that describes a little bit more thoroughly. Frankly, even just pick something that's more engaging. Like we could say, not just I helped customers, but I assisted customers. Not just I worked with the team, but I collaborated with the team. And like literally same dictionary definition, right? But it's more engaging to read. So even something like that can be a good way to kind of punch up those bullet points, right? So be intentional about those word choices. And then we talked about a nice, like, skill-based approach. I think a nice results-based approach is also good, right? So again, this kind of ties back into that why. What was the purpose? What was the goal? Do this where you can. I'm a big fan of numbers in resumes. Numbers are a good way to do this, right? We planned this event and we had awesome attendance. Great. Give me a head count. If it grew, give me a number, give me a percentage. If we raised money, tell me how much. If we worked within a certain, budget, what was that? Throw in some details like this. It's going to be good stuff. It's good specificity. And again, it's very good results kind of centricness as well. I don't know, centricness is a word, but you know what I'm saying here, right? Absolutely incorporate these. Big fan of numbers. Okay. So we've been talking about a few different strategies for bullet points, right? Again, numbers, engaging word choices, skill-based descriptions, all these things, right? So I want to kind of demonstrate this visually for you, right? So maybe this is something we write on our resume, right? Yeah, maybe I was an RA over at my dorm. What did I do? I made events and programs. Okay. Work with other staff members. Yeah, you told me it was daily, so that's helpful, I guess. Helped residents. Again, I told you these are the two words I like least in resumes, and we got them both here, right? Just visually look at these two. One of them looks more complete, doesn't it? Sometimes you just look at a resume and it's like, this looks empty. So what I really want you to know, like, I'm not going to go through like word by word every single thing here, but what I really want to point out is that the strategy stack. It's not pick one of these strategies as the magic bullet that'll fix this description, right? We're probably incorporating multiple of them. So what do we say? Made events and programs. How can we improve this? Made that, again, that a more engaging verb choice, right? Organize these events. What kind of events? More specificity. Diversity related workshops. What was the audience? That who question? Freshmen and sophomores. Again, good specificity. We said, hey, these grade levels. Let's throw a number in there, make it more quantifiable, about 50 of them. So again, you see how they kind of roll through one to the next, right? So you use them all. They are all tools in your belt that are useful. You can see the same thing with those other bullets. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one here, but you kind of see what I'm talking about with this. Okay. We're going to move on and talk about some other sections. We're going to kind of move away from the bullet point stuff. But again, I know that's kind of like the meat on the bones of the resume. So if you have questions on that, definitely ask them. Some other things, some optional things. Your resume is very personal, right? Very individual to you. Your experiences are different from everyone else here in this Zoom, everyone else in your major, all your roommates, whatever. Your goals, what you're trying to do with those experiences are different too. So resume is not one size fits all. Some things that might be, in some instances worth including. We'll see some people include like an objective statement. Sometimes you hear like purpose statement. I think there's a time and a place for it. I think there's a time when it's not as necessary, and that's when if you're submitting like a cover letter, because if the application is asking for a cover letter, you're going to talk through the same thing as an objective statement, just in a more extended format. So focus on it there. Use the page space for something else on your resume. But there are going to be times when this could be a good addition to your resume. right? I think the key word, I might guess because it's highlighted, is context, right? So tell me something that's going to help make the rest of what I read make more sense. If your objective statement is, I am a student at U of I studying this major and I want to work in this industry, like that's probably something I'm going to know anyway, because I'm going to read that education section next. I'm going to assume you want to work in this industry because you're applying to my company. So give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more purpose than just that, right? So I'll give you one example. I work with a student at the Career Center, and this student, they switched majors halfway through their time here at U of I. And it was very evident. They had a kind of a group of experiences over here that were kind of centered around one thing, and then this other group of experiences that were very distant, right? And so we just kind of laid it out like, hey, let's put this out there. Let's again help this make sense. Let's provide that context. And so we kind of said, like, yeah, I'm a student who has just switched to this major, and this is where I'm going with it. So it wasn't like we were making excuses or whatever, but we were providing additional useful information. So not the only example, but there's one for you. Other sections we might consider for a student audience, again, maybe like a coursework related section. I think the pitfall with this is I see a lot of students where their relevant coursework isn't that relevant. It's just a little too all over the place. You know, intro to this thing, intro to this other thing that's not really related, intro to this thing way over there. What I think is a better approach is let's center it around a more specific purpose, a particular knowledge type, a particular skill set that I have built. Let's show a progression over time, maybe. And frankly, this is something where maybe if I'm like a freshman, it's a little too early for me to do something like that. So that could be something where maybe we add this in once we have some more advanced classes to add. Because again, if it's just a little bit of this, little bit of that, I don't know that that's the most effective approach. But again, maybe something where there's a time and place for it. Again, student audience, some of you have gotten like some fantastic scholarships, awards, and all this. Maybe that's the section you're including. I think my comment on this would be, tell me why it's significant. So there may be things like here on the U of I campus, right? Maybe let's use like James Scholar as an example, right? Even if I'm not a James Scholar myself, like I hear that term floating around campus, right? So I have some idea of what it is. Now, outside of the U of I campus, am I going to know what that means? Maybe not. I'm probably going to look at it and say, it sounds good for you, but it's not going to carry much meaning beyond that. So I would suggest, again, tell me why it's significant. Here's a scholarship I got. I got this one because my GPA was super high. Here's this other scholarship. I got this one for doing a ton of community service hours. Like that's kind of what I'm getting at here. I think that's much more effective. Maybe we're including a skills section. I feel like this is kind of a timeless thing, helpful not just for students, but for, other folks across the career lifespan as well. So now when we're talking about a skills section, I do want to point something out because we've mentioned skills before. Remember when we were talking about transferable skills, about soft skills? There is a reason why I brought that up when we were talking through those bullet point descriptions. Because what I frankly don't want to see you do is, okay, here's a list of my skills: leadership, teamwork. Okay, now I kind of have to take your word for it, right? Because those skills tend to be more subjective, the softer skills. So the better approach with those is let's link those to specific concrete examples. That's why I recommend embedding those in your bullet points. Now, there are skills that are more objective. Those are probably okay to do in more of a list form, right? So maybe that is, I can code in Python. Maybe that is, I can use Excel. Maybe it doesn't have to be technical. Maybe it's language, hablando español. Falando Portugués, useful skills, marketable skills. So these are things that, again, they're more objective. We could probably do more of a list there. But if you want to punch up that section even more, what I always appreciate in the skills section is also give me your proficiency level, right? So remember when we were saying there's information that we convey explicitly, there's information we convey implicitly. This is one of those implicit things. I am showing not just that I have this particular skill, again, PowerPoint, whatever, but I am able to self-assess where my strengths are. So maybe I list out my skills and I say, I am advanced in these couple here. I am proficient in this one. I am in this one. Those are some word choices we could use. Just a nice little improvement to a skill section. I always like to see it, that proficiency information, right? potentially, depending on the position you're applying for. Certainly not every position that's out there. Is there like a licensure, a certification of some kind that's needed? If the answer is yes, you probably know that going into the application. If so, then that's something you could add to your resume too. So I'm pretty straightforward with that, I think. Let's talk through some formatting things. Really, these apply to the whole document. We mentioned this before, like, again, the consistency and like, oh, I'm going to italicize this, I'm going to bold this, but I also want to convey that there is a purpose to it, right? Because what it does is it actually helps kind of prime the brain of the person who's reading your resume, right? Because even before I read the content itself, I'm going to kind of pick up on like almost subconsciously, okay, if this is bolded, I know it's this type of information. If it's italicized or underlined or whatever, I know it's this type of information. So again, there's a purpose to it. It's not just, oh, mix it up for the sake of mixing up the format. There is a reasoning behind it. Right? Visual balance. Remember when we had those descriptions like, oh, this looks empty, right? So we don't want an empty looking resume, but we don't want the flip side either, where it's just like, hey, this document is just a solid brick of text, and I don't even know where one section starts and ends. Like that's not ideal either. So somewhere balanced in the middle. Proofread, yeah, I hope that goes without saying, spelling, grammar, punctuation, all that good stuff. And then the last one here, so templates. I actually am not a big fan of using templates, but let me explain that a little bit more. So I think you can absolutely look out there and see like, oh yeah, I found this example of a resume online or whatever, and I like the way they laid this out. I like the way they formatted this. Fantastic. I'm not saying, oh, you need to build from scratch a resume that nobody has ever seen before. Like obviously there are best practices. We've been talking through some of them. But I'm a big fan, homebrew the resume, build it yourself, Microsoft Word, whatever program you're comfortable with, for a couple of reasons. One is that those templates can just be a pain, honestly, sometimes. Maybe they work for you now, when you have maybe I'm an underclassman who doesn't have a ton of experience, but maybe a couple of years from now, when I have more to add in, oh, I want to add a section, I want to move a section around, and it's just going to fight you. Some of you experienced this with some of these templates that are out there. So that's one reason. But frankly, another reason is, if I get your resume, pull it up on my computer, and I'm like, oh, well, this is the 10th one today that looks exactly like this. Is that the strongest first impression? Something to think about. Because I can tell you, if I were to like in the corner of my office, out the corner of my eye, see a resume that is the first option in Microsoft Word under resume template, because I see it all the time from students, and I'm just burned out on it. It's again, it's not like I'm trying to judge you, but like again, what's that true first impression, right? So again, look for inspiration, look for things that you like, 100% do that. But again, homebrew it, build it yourself, really the best way to approach it, in my opinion. And then some things to avoid. Don't exaggerate your experience. I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. Please don't lie on your resume. I really hope that goes without saying. So don't exaggerate, but then honestly, the flip side is also true. You don't want to oversell, but you also don't want to undersell yourself. And I get it. Like I'm an introvert, maybe it's like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. I don't want to come across as cocky. Well, there's probably somewhere between the two, right? Where what we're doing is we're putting our best foot forward. Really, that's what we're trying to do. We want to be mindful of repetitive language too. So again, we talked about like the importance of engaging action words. Maybe I've got a word that I really like, and so I'm going to use it all the time. But if you overuse it, it gets real repetitive. It gets very disengaging for the reader. So mix up those action words, or if you find yourself writing similar descriptions, maybe we can combine those into a single bullet. Like there's different approaches, right? It might also be, oh, I had very similar jobs. You know what? I was doing this research lab last summer, and the previous summer I was in another research lab, but functionally it was about the same thing. I'm just going to copy and paste this, right? No, don't do that, because again, it's very disengaging. Oh, well, I just read this. I'm already like kind of pulling mentally away from your resume. So think through it in a little bit more detail. What were the significant differences, right? And make sure that we're reflecting those. In terms of writing style, remember, again, professional document. Professional is positive. We have all had jobs we hated, and that is legit. It completely is. But I should not be able to tell that reading the resume. So we don't want to badmouth former employers. Even if it's not bad mouthing, we just want to be careful of our attitude, right? So, dealt with customers, and to be dealt with, it almost sounds violent to me. So, things like that. I reviewed a resume for a student, and one of their bullets was, it fixed the problems that always seem to come up. And like, I get what you're saying there, but let's focus on the front half of that. We don't need that second half where kind of your feelings are coming through there, right? So just be mindful of it. We already talked about the high school stuff. Again, let's phase it out over time. Hopefully you're doing some really cool things on campus here at U of I, taking advantage of all that, right? And then the last one there. So references available on request, either this phrase or actually including like contact information for references. Really, this is an older approach. This is just taking up space on your resume that we could use for other things. You may know this if you are applying for jobs or internships right now. Like if they want references, typically they're going to request those as a separate document from your resume. So again, you use this page space for something else. Maybe we could add another bullet or another description or something. I think that's the better approach here. Okay. So we are getting toward the end here. I'm not going to go through every single service that our offers. You can kind of read them on the slide here. Some of the things that we can do for you as a student, but I do want to highlight that we review resumes. Since that's what we're talking about today, let me briefly point out that there's multiple ways we will review your resume. You can come during our drop-in hours, which will be kind of a quicker in out. If you want something that's a little lengthier, you can also pre-schedule an appointment with our office. That'd be like a nice 30-minute sit down. And then the third option is you can submit them online to be reviewed asynchronously. So you would send us the file, we send it back in a few business days with feedback. So again, point is multiple ways that we can take a look at your resume. We're happy to do that for any of you. Again, we serve the whole campus, all majors, all grade levels. So come see us, get your money's worth, make us work for our money. But yeah, so having gone through all of that, I know it was a lot of information. I do want to kind of just take our last moments here and kind of put it out to you all. What questions do you have about resumes? What else is helpful? What do we want to go deeper into? What didn't we get to? Maybe there's things that you're going through right now. Again, if you're applying or whatever, specific things that you want help with. I'll kind of open it up to the group here. So again, use the chat, use your microphone, either way is fine. What else do we want to talk about on the topic of resumes here? What else is good? What else is helpful? Give a second for those wheels to turn.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So if you're applying to a graduate school, are there any specific things you should do on your resume that would be different than applying for a job?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say with grad school, you can, one of the main things is you can be a lot lengthier with your resume, right? So resumes for many fields, like a one-page resume is the way to go, especially like for being at the phase you are all are at, where you just don't have 5-10 years of experience in your field yet. You're students, right? There's exceptions to that: social work, education, federal government positions, a longer resumes, okay. But grad school, they're more open to like what we would call a CV, right? If you've heard that term. So go longer, include other sections, make it 2-3 pages long, like it's all good. So with that, maybe we went back to that idea of relevance. Maybe it's like, oh, well, I just included these couple jobs, but I've got these other ones over here too. Throw them in. Absolutely fantastic. It could also be with a resume for grad school application. Maybe we want to nudge it more toward like some more kind of academic things, right? So maybe it's not just my experience section. Maybe it's I'm also including a section for research or for publications or for presentations, if you have those. I'm not saying like those are required. Everybody's experience is different, obviously. But like it could be a good idea to like, let's actually break those out into their own sections and let's highlight those pretty explicitly, right? So those will be some things to keep in mind. I think overall, some of it is similar to what we would do anyway for like a job application, like kind of, oh, can we like kind of tailor the language to like the field that we're applying to, the field of study. Like again, you can use that with your resume for just job applications, but same thing there. Like if I'm going to do my grad school in X subject area, well, am I describing the things I've done in a way that aligns with that, right? So that might be a slightly different skill set. That might be highlighting more research-based things, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, that was a good question. I hope that kind of answers what you're looking for there. Yeah, I do see in the chat as well. How should we include future jobs or positions? Yeah, that's a good question. So if there's something that you haven't done yet, I would actually hesitate to put it on your resume. I think there are other places you could talk through it. I think you could do it on your cover letter, because the cover letter is more narrative, right? So we can talk more about, hey, not just these are the things I've done, but this is where I'm going. So I would say do it in the cover letter, do it in the interview. I would hesitate to put something that either I'm not currently doing or have not concluded doing on the resume. I feel like that's not really the best place for it, because the resume is like pretty explicitly like more of a reflective document, if that makes sense. So again, I think there's opportunities to talk through it. Again, that cover letter is going to be a good friend for that, because you can lay out more of the storyline, right? Yeah, that's actually a good question. Love it. Very good. Yeah, other thoughts, other questions at the moment. These are good. I like them.
I just added in the chat, there was
Yeah.
in response to Joseph, when I applied to grad school, looking at the CVs, at least for my mentors, in the field that I was applying to, kind of helped me like visualize how I could organize my CV resume. Of course, it's like can be 50 pages long because they have like books and whatever, but it can give you a sense of what is visually appealing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as the cliche goes, right? So yeah, you emulate what other people who are similar to you and who are doing similar things to what you want to do, emulate what they're doing. Yeah, I like that. Oh yeah, skills like PowerPoint. Microsoft, do we have to take a course? Oh yeah. I like that question. So if you've got a credential of some kind, put that in, because that's a nice I don't know if quantifiable is the right word, but like it's similar thought to that, at least like you're able to say like, yeah, boom, here's like my little official seal, right? But I don't think you need that to put it on there. Some things, we just kind of develop through more less formalized experience, right? So I think that's where I would go back to, again, like that proficiency level, right? If it's more that qualitative description rather than boom, here's my credential, I still think it's good. I still think it accomplishes the things that we've talked about, like again, the self-assessment piece. So yeah, I think you use both. If you got a credential, put it on there, but don't feel like I need to have one to describe my skill set. Yeah, that is a good question. All right, other things that are on our mind here. So sensing kind of a lull here. If you are like me, I know I always think of my questions like after I processed a little bit more. So I like anytime someone says to me, any questions, like I'm going to think of it like tonight when I'm lying on my couch or something. So if you think of questions later, come see our office. Again, my name's James. Come see me. Come see any of the other lovely folks in our office. Let us know what we can do to be helpful, because we'll certainly chat about it, resumes or other topics as well. But yeah, I think that'll about do it for me. I know that we've got some other announcements to kind of wrap things up here, so I will turn the floor over here.
I just wanted to add, and James, if you could pull up that slide if possible, just to use the QR code. You are all invited to the We See You spring reception, which is happening April 27th from 3 to 4 at the Alice Campbell Alumni Center. There will be free food and giveaways and a chance to network with a lot of scholars and some community partners. Here's a QR code that will take you to the registration. And then this will also be sent out in the We See You newsletters in case you don't get a chance to take note of it today. But yeah, We See You spring reception, April 27th, and I believe that's a Thursday afternoon, so hopefully you can make it. That was it. I know.
All right, well, very good. I'll leave that up on the screen for a second in case y'all are scanning that. But yeah, I want to thank you all for the questions. Thank you all for the participation and for having me today. I definitely appreciate it. So like I said, come see our office anytime. We'll be happy to help you out. So yeah, let us know what we can do for you. But okay. That's all I got. So